This is going to be my first attempt at a dual camera honing video. I don't know how well it will work, how well it will be visualized, but I'm going to take a shot at it. By dual camera, I mean that I have a camera hooked up to my microscope that is also connected to a monitor, and then I have another camera that I just acquired that will be recording the honing and what is seen on the monitor. The picture quality on the monitor won't be as good as what I normally see of the edge, but it seems like it's going to be doable. So we're starting with a Bartmann razor that I already did a video of, where the person who acquired it had honed it, but was just a beginner, and he did not do enough with it. So I have to do some repair honing to get rid of this type of thing. There is a bit of damage to the edge. Clearly he didn't hone it enough. And I'll clarify this right now. I am using a stereo microscope, so I focus by holding the blade freehand, which allows me to focus by lifting it up and down like this, and I can change the reflection of the light by rotating the blade. Now, that's an advantage when I'm honing, because when I'm just looking in the eyepieces I can just quickly scan the edge, but it can be kind of irritating for a viewer to see all of this shaking, and quite often it being out of focus. You're just going to have to deal with it, because it's pretty much the best I can do with this setup that I'm using. Alright, so with an edge like this, I am starting with a 600 grit hone. I actually would have started with a 400, but my two best 400s I have loaned out to a sword maker, so I don't have a good 400 grit hone to start with. So for now I'm just going to do a couple of starter strokes just to see what effect this hone has on the edge. I am using some pressure, of course torquing the blade toward the edge. Okay, now that's going to have barely accomplished anything, but I just want to see what it's done. And I forgot to start my timer. Alright, let's see what we got. Alright, so it has started to cut a fresh bevel. But clearly there's a lot more to do to get rid of all of that chipping. But that bright area is the freshly cut steel. Alright, don't need to scan the whole blade because there's going to be a lot more to do. So I'm going to start with what are called chisel strokes, or I think I've heard them called axe strokes. Doesn't really matter what they're called. It's just something to remove steel quickly. I have to use a modified setup on my table. I don't normally hone with the monitor in front of me. And the way I'm sitting, my elbow is close to hitting the scope, but I'll make do. So I still have to get below that depth of that chip, and probably other chips. But it's coming along. The edge is, of course, still rough, but that's irrelevant at this point. That's at the toe. That's the heel. And I already have to change the tape. I'm going to switch to a thicker tape because the exact angle at this point is irrelevant for the amount of steel removal that still has to be done. So I'm switching to a slightly thicker tape. I actually use different colors of tape so that if I'm honing multiple razors and I walk away in the middle, I know what stage I'm at. I use one color for bevel setting, one for mid-range sharpening, and one for finishing. The advantage of that is if I walk away in the middle of it and I've got several razors sitting there, I know where I left them approximately. Just a bubble. When my arm is going in front of the camera like that, I am dipping the razor into a mustard jar of water in order to help clear off some of the grit before I wipe it off. It's plastic, so that if I do happen to hit the rim, it's not going to do potentially as much damage. And my camera timed out. So I turn it back on, and we start over. Okay, as I said before, the edge is, as expected, rough. But we're just looking to get to the bottom of the chips. And it looks like that has happened. So I'm going to move up I think I will just regularly turn that off. This is the first time I've done this, so I am going to be making a fairly boring video as I proceed with this. Okay. We're moving up to an 800 grit. Because I've already accomplished the bulk of the steel removal, I have lightened up on pressure, and progressively as we go up the grits, the pressure will become reduced more and more. Blade is making good contact with the hone. You can see the water climbing up the belly of the blade the entire length. Always a good sign. Not quite reaching all the way to the edge right there, which is not critical at this stage. Partly that can be because my tape has worn. As the tape wears, the spine gets closer to the hone, so the blade rotates and the edge lifts off of, or doesn't make contact with. There, that's not making contact either. Alright, what we have here is a very boring honing video. And unfortunately, I don't know how to edit them yet. So, I don't know how to make them go faster speeds. Or editing them in any way at all. So, feel free to fast forward on your own. Normally I use a spray bottle, but I don't want to spray the screen. The heel was lagging behind a bit, so I'm keeping it on the hone longer. Especially if you lighten up the strokes on the 1K, which you should do before you transition to the next hone up, whichever that is. It is definitely helpful to lighten your pressure. And if you do that, you'll find that if you strop the razor and shave with it, you can have a fairly comfortable, certainly effective shave off of even just the 1K. Still not quite making contact there. That area that's reflecting right at the edge of the bevel is not being cut. Bit of schmutz. But clearly all the chips are gone. Okay, this is a case where the heel on the push stroke is not